Welcome to the Living Consciously TV show, coming to you live from our Denver, Colorado studios. I'm your host and moderator, Coach Steve Toth, and our theme today is how to achieve self-mastery. Let me introduce you to our guest cast, as well as our Self-Evolution cast members. Our guest cast today is Rebecca Skeel. She's a licensed counselor, and she's joining us from Santa Fe, New Mexico. Welcome to the show, Rebecca.
Thank you, Steve. Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you as well. Great to have you. And on the left of Rebecca, we have Linda Dyer. She's also part of our Self-Evolution cast, and she's joining us from a continent called Australia.
Yay!
Yay.
Welcome to our show.
Well, thank you, and welcome to 2013, everyone.
Awesome. And then next to Linda, or it used to be next to Linda, but it will be shortly, Ninon DeVerde-Rosa. She is also part of our Self-Evolution cast, and she's joining us from that very unique city called Las Vegas.
And wow, did we have a celebration here for 2013. My goodness, we're going to have an incredible year, and I wish it to all of you and our audience.
Awesome, thank you. And last but not least, we have Jamie Lerner, and she's also part of our Self-Evolution cast, and she's joining us from Chicago. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Jamie.
It's great to be here.
Great to have you. And usually at this time, I used to say, I'm gonna let everybody know how the show is gonna go. And the truth is, I have no idea how the show is gonna go. Because
Neither do any of us.
Because this is a reality show and it's not a scripted show. So let's begin with. I'd like to ask Rebecca, let's clarify this for our viewers. What is really self-mastery, and what is its real purpose?
Thank you for that question. And also, I love that we're going to be talking about this right at the beginning of a brand new year. Self-mastery, to me, is one of the keys to spiritual liberation this lifetime. And so I'll start off with the way that I work self-mastery. And of course, I know we're going to have a discussion here, a very rich, juicy, yummy discussion about self-mastery on lots of different levels. When I'm talking about self-mastery, I'm talking about conscious choice. I'm talking about the ability to be masterful in our choices. I'm talking about working with multidimensional aspects of ourself, and to simplify, I'll just say our human nature and then our divine nature, and how we begin. The way that I work with self-mastery, the way I teach self-mastery, is that the divine nature begins to work with the human nature in a masterful way. Another word for that could be a loving way. And when that begins to happen, then let's say a wholeness or a union emerges in our consciousness. So there's really no duality. There's more, there is a union and a completeness and a sense of wholeness. Okay, I'll start there.
So what is divine? I mean, I heard you say that word, and I'm just feeling that viewers are going, okay, explain to me what divine is.
What is divine? So the way that I orient my life and the way that I teach is that we are spiritual beings, and that spirituality is divine. In other words, it comes from the higher vibrations, the higher holiness of who we are. So that's what I mean when I say divine. It is the invisible of who we are. See, this is the physical. This is what we can see right here. We can taste, touch, feel it through the five senses. When we begin to work with our divine reality, our spiritual reality, then we must work with multi-dimensional senses. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Rebecca, what did you mean by the five senses, so that people understand what the five senses are? Because we use that terminology a lot, and does everybody really understand what that really means?
Yes, thank you, Ninon, for jumping in there and asking me that question. The five senses, the seeing, the touching, the tasting, the smelling, and the hearing. Those are our five senses that go along with our physical form.
Yeah, I usually say that we actually have a sixth that most people can identify with, and that is our intuitive sense.
Sure. Instinctual. Sometimes people throw in instinctual in those senses as well. But those are the ones where we define our reality. And the human nature of us, our humanity, defines reality mostly through those five senses. It's the greater reality of who we are that we have to open up other senses.
And I think we can say that, comfortable say that those five senses are actually very limited. It gives us a very limited experience.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Okay.
It does.
All right,
So we can
awesome.
always expand on the five senses then and let people know that it's not just the five. Like Steve just came in and said he found a sixth, while other people can find a seventh, eighth, and ninth. So there's a lot they can actually find, but at least that gives them a basis as to where to start.
Yes. Yes.
Right, and I wanted to just say something about my own experience when all of this, in terms of self-mastery, and I use a different word for it. It doesn't mean anything. It's the same thing. I call it self-management. It's really for me is the experience of having an understanding and having an experience that I am not my feelings and I am not my emotions. I am much more than that. And when I became clear about that is when I was able to observe my ego. And one day this just happened. And I guess you could say that this may be related to transformation. You know,
I mean, you just found out you have an ego?
No, no. When I was not awake and when I was not conscious, I was just living like my life, like most people do, and I was living my life through my senses, the five senses we were talking about, and I was living my life through. I became my emotions, and I became my feelings and my thoughts, and I was completely lost in those. Does that make sense? So as far as I was concerned, back then, as I remember right now, there was nothing wrong. Everything was perfect just the way it was. I didn't even know to question it.
I was just going to say, Steve, did you know you were actually lost? Because how many people?
No, I didn't.
Think
No,
that
I
that's
wasn't
their
lost.
reality.
What are you talking about? I was.
He was happy and where he was.
I was just doing my thing.
And you were right.
I was just doing my thing. The question didn't even come up. You know, am I supposed to have a different experience than this? It's just, you know, we go through all those, I guess, roller coasters. At least I have in my life, where, you know, we go through the relationships, the breakups, the getting fired, getting laid off, all these experiences, which brings up lots of feelings and lots of emotions for people. And if we don't know how to manage these things, and this is where self-mastery comes in, then I believe our experience of life can be a lot of turmoil, which I think a lot of people can probably relate to that are viewing the show right now or maybe viewing it from the archives. And I think everybody is coming or has come here to be able to be happy and fulfilled. Now, interestingly, for most people, that is not what they're experiencing. Why is that, Rebecca? Why is it so hard to get to fulfillment and to joy and to happiness? It should be an easy thing, shouldn't it? We're having some issues with our audio, so maybe somebody else on the cast can answer.
Okay,
While we're waiting for Rebecca to answer, isn't fulfillment, isn't there a question mark around fulfillment? Like, what is fulfillment? I tell you why I'm bringing up the point. Before looking at this show, I was just thinking about it, and we have another lady in this house, and we decided to set some goals. And she was telling me about her goals, and I'm going, oh my gosh, isn't this amazing that we're in the same house, have the same parents, and our goals are so different. Like, fulfillment to her is such a different kettle of fish than fulfillment to me. And yet, you know, it is what it is. It's not bad or worse or good, or everything's right for the person at the time. So I think fulfillment is for every person such an individual thing. For them, it's their fulfillment at where they're at, their level of awareness at the time.
But I think, Linda, when you were talking about that you and your friend were writing these goals down, and it seems to be an amazing touch of writing something down and actually realizing the goals and the fulfillment you want to fulfill, rather than sort of say, oh, I'll remember them, because sometimes we just don't remember everything. So I think writing it down and everything. But I also feel what Steve said when he said he didn't recognize, you know, that he felt he was perfectly all right. And I think when we address other people and we talk to them, and that they don't realize who they are, what they are, and when we start, you know, criticizing them, whatever we're doing, they misunderstand us, because they really don't know until they're brought to the alerted to you know, there are other parts in this world, and there are other things you can think about, and there are other ways you can change yourself and fulfill your divine self.
I would like to interject something, because I think it's really important for everyone to understand that we're all fine. I mean, we really are all fine where we're at. And if we choose to have a greater experience, that is available to all of us. But there's nothing wrong with any of us. We are all fine where we're at and how we're operating. And once again, it is that choice to expand and to awaken our other senses, so to speak, and to have a richer experience.
I thank you, Jamie, for saying that. And if I could come back to what maybe Steve asked, I agree. It's, for me, I'll just talk from my experience. I reached the point when I was on that roller coaster of my feelings and my thoughts, and I am my feelings. And one day I was feeling on top of the world, and the next day I was feeling, you know, underneath you know, the bed or whatever it was. There was some point where I said, there's got to be more than this. Isn't there more than this? Is this what life is really about? And it was that question that kept rumbling around inside of me that set me on a course to go, what else is there? And to do that, that's a choice. That's the choice. Yes. And that began my journey of being able to say, you know, I don't know if I want to keep being pushed around by my feelings. And I don't know if I want to continue to run these tapes in my head of negative thinking when someone, you know, rejects me or says they don't like me, or I thought I was supposed to get that promotion and I didn't. That's when I started questing for something else.
And the good news is that there are so many wonderful options out there for people to tap into now, more so now than ever before. So, and I think this show is certainly one of them. But yeah, you know,
all right. So Jamie, you represent the light to me, and your screen just went pretty dark.
Okay.
So can you turn on some more light so we can actually see you?
Yes, I can do
and
that.
While you're doing that, I'm going to say something about fulfillment. We were talking about fulfillment just a few minutes ago. And so for me, fulfillment is something that just I became very clear about. And what it is that for me, and really that's all we can do is speak from ourselves and from our own experiences on this show, because nothing else makes a difference. So for me, it's like there is a reason that I came here. There is a reason, there's a purpose behind why I am on this planet. There is a reason for all the things that I've gone through on my journey, good, bad, or different, not to be necessarily judged, because every experience I went through was for my growth and for my learning. It's perfect. Just like Jamie said. However, what I would like to encourage people to look at, just to look, that what is that purpose that you came here for that's bigger? Like for me, it's bigger. The purpose that I have for my life is bigger than me. It is no longer about me. And I could say, from my own experience, that when I was not conscious and not awake, everything was about me.
But I think what we're really talking about is the expanded version of who we are, because it is about us, and it is about tapping into that joyful nature of the expanded version. So if we could think about ourselves as expanding the true authentic version of who we came here to be, I think that would be another way to look at it, because it is about us.
Mm-hmm. And it's about the multi-dimensional reality of who we are. When I was just sitting here, relating it back to self-mastery and how I see self-mastery working into this thing of fulfillment. And on the human nature reality, there is certain levels of fulfillment. There are certain levels of happiness. And certainly my first part of my life was in that realm and in that reality a lot. I was doing all the things that most of us do. And then I reached that point where I said, isn't there more than this? And one of the things for me, that I had to begin to move out of or move beyond and expand out of was to give up or find other benchmarks, if you will, reference points for safety, for security. Because those are the two things that keep us running back or on the merry-go-round of the human nature. It's the human nature agenda to stay safe and secure no matter what, even if it's miserable. At least we know it. So it's like beginning to expand out from there. And that's when the divine or the spiritual essence of who we are, divine nature, can begin to masterfully work with our human nature. So that to me is when fulfillment, let's say a greater fulfillment, begins to come in.
Yeah, I think so many people out there are so afraid of what you just said, Rebecca, of having that fulfillment and having that comfortable feeling. And obviously it's because of, the economy and the way of life and bringing up 2 children and 3 children or however many, and having this definite place you have to definitely be in. And sometimes I think they're a little afraid that if they do step out of that place where they're at, that things are going to go chaotic, and then they can't feed their children, and they become a little bit afraid of where to go and how to do it. And I think
Yes.
to not do too many things, just go on to one goal or have one thing in your life that's going to put a smile on your face that you can, master and you feel good at. And I think to give our audience out there that you don't have to do a whole bunch of stuff. It could just be one little thing to satisfy you and start the ball rolling of saying, oh my goodness, yes, I can do that and I can reach that, and that will fulfill a little part of my life, of the regular life I have to live. And I think it's so tough for them out there.
And the idea to reach inward, because if we're talking about tapping into other senses, to instead of so much reaching outward to seeing what is outside of ourselves, because really there is nothing outside of ourselves that helps us navigate. It's all within. So to take that time to pause from what is going on outside and just tune in and listen for those inner messages, your inner being who really is, there for you 24/7, guiding you.
So how does that occur for you, Jamie?
I think that that's really where I am a lot of the time. I've practiced myself into that self-mastery, which has taken practice. But I think that I am guided internally all the time. That I am.
And I think that's a really good point, because so everyone's guided. Everyone out there in this world is guided. It's just that sometimes we become so busy that we're not listening to the message, and it's all around the busyness, and the messages were there all the time. Like I ask my training clients, how many of you had a gut feeling that you really wanted to go and do something and it would have been amazing and something stopped you? What was it that stopped you? But you had that gut instinct or that message.
That's the
like.
intuition I was talking about earlier, the sixth sense.
Absolutely. But to me, Steve, that intuition is also the divine messages, because I believe that we will never, ever be given an idea that we can't achieve. And since I believe that, I've now been able to step further and further outside of what was a comfort zone, which is really not a comfort zone. It's actually a decline. I get that now because the energy moves in one way or another. So when we're in comfort zone, we're actually declining. And so, remaining comfortable, I don't know, isn't a good place. It's a place of not being who we're put on this planet for, that it's great to feel good about us, but there is something that we were put here to do. And if we just forget about the how, and I think that's what we get caught up in, that we don't know how to do it. The thing is, I don't believe we're ever meant to know the how. I think we're meant to just decide that we want to do something more. Like Ninon said, just one thing more. What is it that you really would like to have a go at, and that you've in the past been a bit fearful of? And forget about the how. That's the divine. That's where the divine comes in. Because the minute you make the decision to do that, everything comes to you. It's the law of attraction.
Then we also make that decision of thinking, oh, we can't do it, and we don't. We're also making that decision. So it's funny because we're making a decision to go forward and to sort of listen to our inner self. And then all of a sudden we turn around and say, no, which is not really listening to our inner self, because we've now ignored that. And now we're thinking, no, I can't do that. How do we get over that, Rebecca? So many people, like, Linda just said that. We want to do it, and then we stop ourselves.
Well,
it's the same person.
Hang on for a second. Before Rebecca responds,
Sure.
I just want to say that there is this conversation that we all have in our head, and there is the conversation. There can be and specifically that's in our head. That's already bad news. So if we are listening to what our mind is telling us to do, that is only a small percentage of the story. I think how we can best serve ourselves is to tune into that intuition that all of you have mentioned, and actually follow and listen. And I know it's hard to do for a lot of people, and especially, this show, we're talking, right? So, but listening is a more important thing than talking.
Absolutely.
Why is it that we don't have two mouths?
My favorite saying.
We have two ears.
We have 2 ears. We have 2 eyes.
So listening is an important one, and then feeling is also important, to make sure that whatever it is that we're hearing, there's a feeling that's going to come up that's going to say, yeah, that's it. That is congruent with who I am. And then the other piece that I wanted to say that, Nina, you mentioned, the one that's usually shutting us down is our egos and the experience of the memory of the mind that has all these stories and all this stuff that has happened in our lives, and it's happily turns on the tape and tell us exactly what we don't need to do to stay in our comfort zone.
And then the other thing we do is we ask other people, and that's the biggest mistake of all. Because
everybody has an opinion,
knows
right?
Better for you than you, and as soon as you look outside of yourself to find that approval from another, that's it. It's over.
It's over.
So I would say trust yourself, because you do know best for you.
Very good point.
Yeah.
And I think too that one of the questions that comes with that is, rather than ask somebody else, is to ask yourself, how can I make that happen? So if I've got something I want to do, then all I do now is I say, how can I make that happen? And I will sit down and write all the things that I can do to make that happen. And I don't look at any way that it cannot happen. If I really want it, if the idea comes to me and I really want it to work, then I go, how can I make that happen? And to be able to cure yourself of a disease, to be able to travel the world and do whatever you want to do, to be able to just do and feel free within yourself to do what you were meant to do. How can I make that happen? It's just such a great question, and it's so calming.
Because it's funny, I have a great experience. I just did that, and I'm in real estate, and I just did that with 2 pieces of property of mine. I had redone them, and then I thought myself, I'm going to redo a modification on them again. But what I put in my mind was that whatever happened, it didn't matter. But if I didn't try and do it, it wouldn't happen. So therefore, my mind was set, and I actually did it. And I thought and I was thinking of the consequences, and I cleared the total mind of it being negative. And I thought, well, the only thing they can say is no, they can't do it. So it just stays where it is, which was fine. But in the meantime, because I put that effort forward and I did it all, it came back 100% positive. But I did put that positive energy into it, and it really works. So putting a positive energy into something you're doing, it really does work, rather than sort of saying, well, maybe, I don't know. Positive, yes.
Yes. Well, and another benefit of self-mastery is to begin to get in touch with the masterful presence that we are. When Jamie talked about going inside, and we're talking about, and Steve said, if it's in your mind and we're going outside to ask others, we're lost. Being able to get in touch, first of all, and know the voice of the masterful presence inside of ourselves. And I know people ask me all the time, does it have a different tone? Does it, sound like a male rather than a female or whatever? No, it's a frequency. The way that I experience it, it's a frequency, it's a vibration, and that takes attunement, doesn't it? It takes being able to attune to that inner voice inside of ourselves. And then as we begin to listen more to that masterful presence, and I call it our divinity, begins to come forward more and more. And that, to me, is another benefit of spiritual mastery, of self-mastery.
Absolutely, yeah, it's very good.
So can we...
And I think it's like taking that step, isn't it? That just taking that step and doing
Initial
it once.
Step.
And then all of a sudden you go, okay, it wasn't so tough. Like that terror barrier that we put up isn't the Grand Canyon, it was a creek. And it really is easy to go across, and you think, oh, why didn't I do that sooner? It was such an easy thing to do. It was just myself keeping me back.
Yes.
But I was really meant to take that step, and then all of a sudden you go, okay, now I know that when I get to that terror barrier, I'm meant to cross it simply because I know that there's that little bit of confusion just prior to going out of our comfort zone. So let's do it again. And let's do it again.
That's such a wise, masterful thing that you just said, Linda. Knowing that when we get to that point, I'm supposed to keep going. I'm not supposed to run in the opposite direction. That's such a wonderful place to come to and a masterful choice to make.
Take on the consequences.
Yeah. So let me attempt to make it even more simpler for our viewers, if I may.
Good. Yay.
So can we choose to be happy no matter what?
Yes, we can.
Of course we can. Absolutely.
No matter
yes.
what. Yes, we can.
Absolutely.
And how do we do that?
We do it when we choose not to become dependent upon other people's responses to us in order for that happiness to occur. So we are taking responsibility of how we feel and what we are choosing to think about. And I think that allows us to step into happiness every single moment.
I like to work a lot with self-acceptance. And to me, my happiness has a lot to do with how accepting am I. And when I say accepting, what I mean is I'm not judging. I'm just saying, well, this is what's going on. I'm accepting everything that's going on inside of me and outside of me. The other thing that I work with a lot with self-acceptance is also gratitude. To me, gratitude is one of those magical things that begins to happen. It's a frequency and a vibration. I think everything is energy. So when I begin to get into a state of gratitude, even if I'm really upset, if I just close my eyes and say, okay, I am just grateful right here, right now for this breath. And I take in a nice deep breath. I am grateful right here, right now for the fact that I'm warm and I have something over my head. And then from there, I just, it starts rolling inside of me. And before you know it, in 3 or 4 minutes, whatever has been weighting me down or whatever begins to dissipate. It's that attitude of gratitude that really, I believe, uplifts us into happiness.
And it's so profound because it's what takes us from that senses state that physical sensory state into our divinity. So it's the minute we become grateful for everything that's around us. I remember coaching a client once and I said, I don't care if it's every blade of grass in your backyard. just, you know, be grateful for what you have and who you are and whatever may come your way and what you can do with it and take it and where you want to go. And that actually links you with your divinity, and it's calming. You know, running around on your senses is not so calming. I mean, I got lupus doing that, so I know exactly where that can lead. But however, being grateful for great health and being grateful for what we have will bring you more. It will bring you more because the universe will always reward people who have gratitude.
So I had an experience recently. A friend of mine said this to me, and I want you to tell our viewers what's off with this statement. So the statement was, I'm going to do this and this and this to get whole again.
Well, well, the first thing I would have said to that person is I would have said, you're already whole.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
and that belief that you're not, that's where we need to go. What is that belief?
Yeah.
And how do we clear the belief?
That's where the pain comes from.
Yeah.
The limiting belief of I am not whole.
Right.
Right.
But then you won't be whole. If that's what you think. If you think you're not whole, you won't be whole. And, you know, as everybody knows, I'm a very positive person. That's how I am. I just think of the positive side of life and not the negative side of life. But at the same time, I still try to sort it out. So I think he needs to just like himself first. He's got to make himself whole, like himself, and look at the good things about him and not the bad things, and improve, you know, his inner side, not his outside.
Yeah. So getting back to self-mastery for a second here, since this is a show about consciousness. So what is everybody's experience in terms of going in and out of consciousness? How do you experience on a moment-to-moment, minute-to-minute, hour-to-hour, week-to-week, month-to-month, how do you experience personally going in and out of consciousness?
Well, you know, I think, once again, that to be unconscious is fine as long as you're choosing it. So to make the conscious choice to be unconscious or to recognize when you are connected, I think that's more important than continually being a conscious person. So to have this sensibility of knowing when you're connected, disconnected, connected, disconnected. And I think for most of us, it's moment by moment throughout the entire day.
Yeah.
You know, we're connected, we're disconnected, we're connected, we're disconnected. But
so
once again,
would you have a personal experience to offer up? Like, how do you know that when you're not connected? How do you know? How do you catch yourself?
You know, there's a moment where I just don't feel good, because when I'm connected, I feel so good. And you get quite sensitive to being disconnected when you're connected a lot of the time and feeling good. So there is that moment where I can recognize quite quickly, and then I can choose. You know, that's the beauty of it. I can choose to stay disconnected because it's possible that in that moment, that's more gratifying. But you know, once again, I think it's more the choice to be or not to be than the actual connection itself.
And how does it get more or less complicated when you are with people, when you are experiencing this going in and out?
I know for sure that if in a moment I'm disconnected from myself, if in any way I'm feeling disapproval of another or judgment of another, that is an immediate cue to me that I am disconnected from myself, and it has nothing to do with another person. So it's easier to know that when you're with other people than it is sometimes when you're with yourself and kind of lost in your head and your thoughts. And but yes, I think that it's that's a pretty quick knowing.
So Rebecca, how do you handle rejection, or somebody is actually making a statement about you? How do you handle that? If it's specifically if it's not positive.
Yes. Well, I handle a lot better than I used to, let's say. first thing I'll say is that there's really no part of me that likes rejection. And there's no part of me that if someone is saying something negative to me about me, that's going to like it. And so how do I handle it? Well, I'll walk. But
wouldn't that be your ego that wouldn't like it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That is my first response, is my human nature, my ego, personality, whatever you want to call it. So I'll walk you through my 6 self-mastery steps. The first thing that if I'm conscious, and that's a really wonderful thing that you're bringing forward here, Steve, because the first thing we must do is know that our human nature is going to be in a reactive state. It's going to react somewhere way. It's either going to flee or it's going to put up some kind of protection. And usually protection, either goes into denial, or if it protects back, it could, I could react back to that person, and say something to them, rude or insensitive or whatever. That's our reactive state. So when we decide, however, to be conscious, the first thing I do is I observe what's going on inside of me. And there's parts of me that are going to be an upset about that because, like I said, I don't like rejection. So I first observe that.
Yeah,
my ego does not. Yeah. Right. My ego does not. My human nature doesn't. So first of all, I observe it. Then the next thing I want to do is I want to accept, wow, there's a part of me that really got my feelings hurt. There's a part of me that didn't like that statement or that feeling. I don't like these feelings that are going on. I don't like that this person has rejected me, but I accept it all. And when I go into acceptance, something inside of me relaxes. Then the next thing I do is I open my heart with compassion.
But hang on for a second before you go
there.
Sure. So just because somebody said something, that doesn't make it true.
Oh, no.
Right.
Oh, no. No, it's not about truth at all. No. No.
It's about your perception of truth.
Yeah,
yeah, that's what I wanted to. That's what I wanted to bring out.
Exactly. It's like no, it's not
this
about
is like,
truth.
This is like
playing
in a theater. Yeah.
No, we're dealing in perception. We're dealing in opinions like noses. Everybody's got one. Yeah. So then I open my heart to myself of compassion. I become very compassionate with myself, that I'm in upset, that I'm in hurt feelings, that I maybe even want to lash out at that person, maybe get defensive. I get compassionate with myself. Yeah. Then the next thing I do,
and hang on for one more second, because I want to make sure the viewers get this, okay? Because there's several things going on here. There's you going on and how you're reacting, and I also want to make sure that the viewers are reminded that whoever gave that judgment, okay, it is something that they should look at in terms of you being a mirror for them. Because there's no way they could have noticed you or could have the opinion or the judgment of you if it didn't already lived within them.
Right.
And a matter of fact, having that same issue that they're judging about you, it's really something that they don't like about themselves.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
So I just wanted to make sure that we kind of handling both sides.
Yes,
okay.
Thank you for putting that forward.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Where was I? Oh, compassion. Okay, so then the next thing I want to do is I want to forgive myself. Now, this is all going on. Notice that someone, says something to me. So rather than going out to that person, I own it all. I turn it into myself and I work it in a masterful way. So then I want to forgive myself. I want to forgive myself for judging myself as maybe not good enough because this person doesn't like me. They've rejected me. I might forgive myself for believing that I'm a failure or I'm a whatever. I'm not lovable. I'm not likable because this person has said, I don't like you for whatever reason. Go ahead. I heard you take a breath.
Okay, so what you're really saying then is you want to forgive yourself for your own reaction.
I want to forgive myself for my judgments and my beliefs that are causing my reaction.
Okay,
And
got
I
it.
agree with that.
Very
I
clear.
agree with
Okay,
that.
good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. Then after I do that, then I usually am in a much more, let's say, expanded, Jamie, an expanded state. So I can experience, I might even then be able to say to myself and maybe the other person, maybe not, like, wow, I'm sorry that you don't like me. And I might even be able to genuinely say to them, I hear you. What I did wasn't okay with you. And I
Can I ask you a question, Rebecca? Do you
Sure.
think that if we were in a place of connection with ourselves, that we would even allow all that to occur? Do you not think that we would then interpret someone else's disapproval of us as simply their disapproval of us, really having nothing to do with us? So, I mean, I think that's important to make the distinction.
Right.
That in itself is the point of disconnection. If we have allowed it to go that far.
It's funny you should say that, and Steve knows this, that I just went through exactly what you're talking about, right, Steve?
Yeah, I was going to actually mention it, so I'm glad that you are.
Yeah, I'm going to mention this, and I just went through this, and it's a long story, but I've been doing television for, 15, 20 years as a talk host, and I've never experienced what I experienced. I think it was this week. And it was quite amusing. I was interviewing this guy and everything was fine. And then I do a little critique thing at the end of my show. And he just cut off the show. And he didn't even know where I was going with the sentence, but assumed, which is looking at himself in the mirror, a reflection of himself. And then I get an email back from him, which was absolutely appalling as to my behavior. And he didn't even really find out really where I was going. And he just took one couple of words and that was it, slam off, but which didn't matter. So as you said, I looked at it all and I thought, oh, okay, take a breath, take it all in. And where is it coming from? Well, I thought, well, it's not coming from me because this is an email coming from him. So this is nothing to do with me, actually, because I hadn't really done anything. But at the same time, it was two people having, this problem, or one person having this problem. Anyway, so I wrote back and I apologized because I really felt that, if I'd said anything, I'm sorry, blah, 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 blah. And I thought, and I said, please send me your phone number. I would like to talk to you like a one-on-one and sort this out. Then I got another long email. And it goes on and on and on how bad I was and how terrible I was. And I'm just looking at him thinking, wait a second, this guy has a problem. I'm not going to mention his name. I'm not going to mention anything about what he does or who he is, nothing. But this man, and I actually truthfully took it out of my being and out of myself, and I took it completely out of there. And I didn't feel sorry for him. I just felt to myself, how could I help him, which I obviously can't reach him because he doesn't want to be reached, and he's always going to kind of have this dilemma. So I actually went in and prayed for him. I felt so bad for him. I went and prayed for him.
And all of that happened from your greatest point of connection with yourself.
And it did. And thank you, Jamie. And it happened. And I thought to myself, don't be mad at him and don't be mad at yourself. But at the same time, Rebecca, when I'm listening, I'm reading all this stuff, I'm thinking to myself, wait a second, he's got some good points here. So I also took the good points out of it.
Yeah,
so there's a lot of stuff you can take out of something. You can either go, and really fly off the handle. And I think if you sort of take a deep breath like we all do at the beginning of the show, hopefully, and sort of understand where it's coming from, who it's coming from, and understand it is not you. And it wasn't me. And I truly wanted to write back to him. And I might even write back to him. I don't know what I'm going to do just yet because it only happened this week. But I truthfully let it go. And I felt at ease and I felt so comfortable. And I think rather than taking something on of somebody else's, I just sort of let it relax for a little bit, think about it. And I will get back to it. And Steve, I think Steve understood it too, didn't you?
It's tough to reason with people whom are being unreasonable.
Absolutely. So that's the last. That's when you don't. That is when you don't get back to them, because if you get back to them,
it just
then
goes
you've got
down
a problem.
in a negative spiral. Basically,
I think it's really important. I think it's really important here that we look at a couple of things that Ninon's saying. When somebody's doing something toward you, it can be a trigger for them. You can be a trigger for them for you physically. You can be a trigger for somebody in their experience from their past. And you can also, your words, like Ninon said she said a couple of words and he reacted to those words. So it doesn't matter how the word is said. So let's say somebody says, oh, I'm just a tad disappointed in that. Now, as a child, that man may have had somebody going, I'm disappointed in you, you don't measure up. And all of a sudden, it doesn't matter how you say the word disappointment, it's a trigger for this person to react and go on and on and on about something, a small word that was said in a very quiet way, and it becomes their hugest issue. So I think we have to be aware.
Absolutely right. That's exactly what happened. And what I was saying had nothing to do where he went. And it had nothing to do. I was going in another direction. I think Steve knows that. And I wasn't going in the direction he thought it was. And then it just, it was crazy. But you're right. You're absolutely right, Linda.
I think what happens, though, is if we allow that then to affect us, then we're now disempowered.
We're now part of them. We're now who they are.
We're now disempowered to whoever they are because we've allowed them to affect us. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important. I think our being is for us to be at cause. If we can be just responsible, be at cause, and as you say, go into us and say, oh, okay, so my word is interesting. Rather than react or respond now, I go, oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting conversation that you're having. For me, it's everyone's right. So it's right for that person, but it's also right for me that I don't need to take it on board.
That's right.
It's right for them. They need to express it because they have that need to express it. And, that takes some guts. And I think for their viewers out there, the day that somebody says something to you and you decide to think that it's an interesting statement and not that you're going to allow it to affect your state, because as Steve said earlier, we are not an emotion. We may have emotions and we carry emotions. We can have an emotion, but we're not the emotion. It's not the totality of us. So we can choose to go into that emotion or not.
Linda, hang on for a second. So I think the thing to kind of pay attention to is that if we allow ourselves to react, we have some healing to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's
we need to get back to our connection with ourselves.
That's just really the red flag that, hey, whatever just happened, whatever experience I just had, I'm in a reactive mode, so I got to go inside and do some work.
Yeah, that's what I did.
And the thing about our human nature, all of us, we have human natures, and they have little hidden buttons that are still hot spots inside of us. And I've been doing this work for, over 20 years, and I still, out of the blue, something will happen, and all of a sudden I'm in reaction. It's like, whoa, where did that come from? Yes. So it's the ability to, first of all, be very compassionate with ourselves and do that inner work and do that work so that now instead of having that reactive hotspot, that trigger, now I have the loving. That's, to me, another big benefit of self-mastery. I have now replaced that trigger with my self-loving. So the next time that happens, I might have the response like Linda says, oh, well, that's interesting. Gosh, I remember when that was a really hot button, and now it's just kind of like, wow, that's interesting. Cooled off. And yet, right, exactly, it's cooled off.
Yeah, and we could actually have a very nice practice that when somebody gets to actually activate us or get us into a position of reaction, that after we've done our work with ourselves, we should be able to get back to them and thank them because they were actually in service.
Serving us.
Oh, yeah. You mean I got to write to this guy and thank him?
Because without them doing whatever they did,
I've done that. I've written to people and said, I just want you to know how much value I got from what happened here.
I might just do that. This is what I've been thinking about. I'm thinking how to handle it. I know I don't want to jump right away. So, Steve, that's a good point. I like that. I like it.
Yeah, the thing not to do, and that a lot of people do that, it is to go back and judge them. I mean, I've been in relationships where we were doing that back and forth until we were able to transform that. And again, that's very healthy. It can be very healthy as well if you got somebody that always triggers you. And that's something I learned about being around a lot of women, as you can tell, is that I now make them my friends instead of my enemy.
It's a very good idea.
And if they activate me, that's
Steve,
fantastic, because then I get to work something out within myself.
Steve, you and I had that problem when you had 3 weeks, you wouldn't kind of call or talk or something, you had a problem, and then suddenly you realized it wasn't a problem, remember?
There's all kinds of things that happened in the years, and years that we've known each other.
But
yes.
he realized what the problem was, and then he realized, I'm just going to quote you, and he realized, he got on the phone and he said, I realized that, that was kind of my problem, it was nothing to do with you, and,
Yeah,
and I
absolutely.
didn't know what it was.
And we had stuff where I said something and you hung up.
Probably.
We had that too.
I usually say I'm busy,
But then,
so there's always some word there.
But here's
just
what's
have
cool
okay.
about these relationships is we don't run away. Because really, I mean, I cherish my relationship with everybody that I work with, and that definitely includes Ninan and includes everybody on the show and beyond the show, because these relationships are very valuable to me.
So they teach us.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You
That's
know,
how I
the
get to
other
be a
thing
better
is
human
we
being.
need to give ourselves permission to say to another, let me think about that and get back to you. Where, we can have a moment to reflect and to decide. And so I think that's another way of giving ourselves permission to kind of pause and check in.
Check in.
Jamie, I had to do that when I came back from overseas, and my son had borrowed my car and it had a little dent in it, and I'm going, oh, not again, and I'm just about to do this reaction, and I went, you know what?
Just wait.
I said to him, just hang on a minute, I just need to work this through. And he said, thank you for being so understanding. I said, oh, I'm not understanding yet. And I said, give me 24 hours. So I actually slept on it.
Yeah.
And I thought about it, and I thought, what's really going on here? And this was where I really got the difference between reaction and responding. And I woke up the next morning, and what came to me, the message from the divine, as Rebecca was talking about, was very clear, and it had, he's always late. And I went, okay. So I went down and I said to my son, well, the message came to me was that if you can choose not to be late, then you won't have all these car accidents because you're rushing here and rushing there and backing into this and opening the door quickly there. Then I may consider lending you my car again. But if you can change the habit of not being late, I'll consider lending you my car. Now, it was so different to coming home and reacting when nobody gets anywhere. The car still doesn't get fixed. He's still late. Nothing changes, to let me think about that. So it's a really good point that you brought up, because it changed everything.
And also the wear and tear on your body. I mean, you're getting angry, the wear and tear and aggravation, and then you start getting sick and all these crazy things happening. But when you relax, you address something within in the proper manner, you will not be sick.
Yeah,
Okay.
the thing I like to
So-
think of is visionary or reactionary, because those are two very different points of
Yes.
reference.
This happens on every show. Ladies, we are running out of time. And so I want to just focus all of us real quickly, see if we can give some tips to our viewers about how do we become our own spiritual masters, and maybe just keep it to one tip so we can get it kind of moving real quickly.
Okay.
One tip.
Don't be afraid of yourself. Don't be afraid of who you are. Don't be afraid to address who you are and what you are, and love yourself.
Okay, great. Rebecca?
That you do have a master inside of you. You have a master consciousness, and it is available and waiting for you to knock on the door, because it will open.
Yeah, Jamie?
No one knows better for you than you. So trust yourself, because you always know.
Yes. And Linda?
Just a quote that God's gift to you is more talent and ability than you can ever use in your lifetime. Your gift back is to give as much of your talent and ability as you can in your lifetime. Go for it.
Great quote. Great quote.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely.
And
Awesome.
for me, it's trust your intuition. It's really your divine guidance.
Absolutely.
And with that, I want to thank all of our viewers, as well as Rebecca, our guest cast, and the entire Self-Evolution Cast, for being with us today. And if we have said anything or did anything on this show that touched, moved, and inspired you, I would like to inspire you to go to livingconsciously.co and allow our cast members to give you some coaching. There's no charge. And other than that, make sure that you come to our website, livingconsciously.tv, and interact with us there by giving us some feedback, also commenting on our website as well, and definitely go to our site or page on Facebook, which is www.facebook.com/livingconsciouslytv. I love you all, and I love these shows. I love to be in service to all of you and all of our viewers, and I can't think of anything else that I would rather do. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See you next week. Same time, same place.
Bye.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Bye.
Bye.